I'm Elliot Cox.
I'm Dr. Joe LaPlaca.
I'm Travis Cox, a.k.a. Elliot's dad, and this is The Skinny.
From the Fatheads Eyewear Studios in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny, brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, General Tire, and Dream Giveaway. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by General Tire. It's more than just a slogan. Anywhere is possible with General Tire. General Tire's Grabber X3 mud terrain tire offers aggressive styling and is engineered for durability with innovative performance features that are ready to carry you through extreme mud, dirt, and rock-covered terrain. For extreme traction that's ready for anything and rugged styling to match, look no further than the Grabber X3. Make your anywhere possible by visiting GeneralTire.com today. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. We have some great guests that will join myself and Rico Elmore here once again. A young gun making his name coming up through the industry. He's sitting on one side of the bench. His name is Elliot Cox. On the far side of the bench is his father, Travis. His mother, Amanda, is also sitting here, and the reason we put them on opposite ends of the bench is clearly to separate father and son. We know what can happen there, and sitting in the middle, the rose between the two thorns, if you will, is Dr. Joe LaPlaca. Great to have you guys.
Thanks for having us.
We'll look forward to the conversation here because this young man has already been very, very impressive coming up through the ranks, of course. Chasing the goal, which so many young kids are, wanting to be an IndyCar. His goal is actually pretty specific, wanting to be the youngest winner of the Indianapolis 500. Very impressive. Might as well, if you're going to set a goal, set a big one, right? But what he's done already in racing, winning the championships that he's done, is certainly very impressive, and we've seen that happen along the way. But he's also very involved in charitable activities already, raised a lot of money, and has been picked up by Sarah Fisher. So clearly making some waves here inside of the industry. So I applaud you guys for the hard work already.
Thank you.
So tell me how this got going. We've got Dad on the far side, Travis. I've lived in your shoes. This guy has come up through the ranks in the industry and watched a lot of dads do what you do. And you seem to be making all the right steps because it's really easy to make an incorrect one.
Yeah, it's, I can, look back, and this has been, 8-9 years now, and this was never the plan. And, people ask us all the time, did you have any background in racing? Did you race? How did you get him into it? And quite frankly, I wanted nothing to do with this. This was one of those things that it was meant to be, and I had to learn it as a dad and a mechanic along the way.
Yeah, I read one of the articles where it said, I really had no idea what a carburetor or a clutch even was. So
yeah, I didn't.
You learn about those really quickly.
I learned it was a baptism by fire.
Yeah, because those clutches are everything. You learn really quickly where to bring those things in and make those adjustments. It's pretty cool. So how has the ride been?
It's been incredible. It's it truly has been a blessing. We look back, and the time we spend together as a family now is just terrific. We probably have more time together now than we ever did before, and it's just been a really cool journey to be part of.
So Elliot, tell me about your experience. So what got you motivated? Most kids would chase a stick and ball sport, soccer, baseball, whatever the case may be. It just tends to be where we go first. But something about you clearly drew you to racing.
Yeah, since I was 5 years old, I've always been fascinated by speed. Originally, I'd actually wanted a dirt bike, and nobody wanted me to have a dirt bike because that just didn't seem like a good idea. So me and my grandpa, my grandpap, just took me to the go-kart store one day. There was a dirt bike, and he said, hey, look, there's this little kid cart. Let's try this instead because it has four wheels and it looks a lot more safe. So we brought it home. And even though it was more safe than a dirt bike, my mom obviously freaked out and called him insane. Didn't know what the heck we were doing and wanted him to take it back immediately. And he thought it was a grass cart, so we set it in the grass, and it doesn't go in the grass, obviously. And
love it.
My mom, before that, had said, you're never going to drive it anywhere but the grass. So it was like a moment. And we set it on our pavement driveway, and I just really fell in love with it. And my mom was actually the one who took me to the go-kart track to get lessons in the first place. So it's been quite a roller coaster already. And then, yeah, here we are now.
Speaking of roller coaster, I always love the roller coaster of mom emotions. No, you're not going to do that. It's not safe. You're going to get hurt. And the second they get in the cart, the first one you hear screaming, win, win, win.
Right, exactly.
It is crazy the emotions that this sport will bring out of everybody. So I'm just curious, when Grandpa bought that go-kart, was that before or after he jumped out of the plane and broke his shoulder?
That didn't happen. Mom, this is why we don't tell stories like that.
That was a pre-story that we had heard from Mom a little bit earlier in the day. So, well, that's great. I mean, it's awesome, and you're exactly right. They don't go very well in the grass. But what'd you think, Dad, whenever he brought the go-kart home?
I was not a fan. Going back, I didn't know anything about them. I thought it was going to be one of those phases that lasted for a short period of time. And my goal was after the wintertime was to sell it and go buy a fishing pole. And my plan didn't work. So
what time of year was it whenever you actually bought it and brought it home?
So it was just after my 5th birthday. It was like fall, like September-ish. So we didn't really have any time that winter. So it was obviously what, like you said, he wanted to sell it after the winter because he thought I would fall apart from it, like during the winter when I wouldn't get to drive it, and that obviously didn't happen. So,
yeah, Rico's heard this story before. Whenever we moved here from New Jersey, my son was 12 years old, and I had promised him a four-wheeler. Whenever we got here, we'll go riding in the woods, and followed through on that promise. And there was a day he wanted to go ride in a four-wheeler, and it was probably close to wintertime, but late fall, spitting snow and rain. It was really cold, and we had to go pick up the trailer with the four-wheelers in it. And I said, "Are you sure you want to go riding today? It's pretty nasty out, bud." And he looked at me. He said, "Nah." He said, "If we don't go, can we stop and look in that go-kart shop?" And Rapid Racing was over there, and we had been driving by it for a year, picking up the four wheelers, and I always said, "No, there's not time." And I'm like, "Sure, I mean, if we're not going to go riding, we got all day, So we go in, and of course he lays his eyes on his first go kart, and my dad had raced karts, so I was in a kart whenever I was really young. He was in a kart when he was really young, so we had this affection for it. When I walk in and I get goosebumps now. I walk in and I see the modern day go karts, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that thing's awesome," So he's looking at it, drooling. I'm looking at it, drooling, and we walked out of the shop, and unbeknownst to him, I came back and bought the cart and gave it to him for a Christmas present. So he had to walk out in the garage and see the go-kart. Well, good news, bad news. I mean, good news is you get a go-kart for Christmas. Bad news is you live in Indiana and you get to stare at it now for three more months because you can't use it, So that's why I was asking what time of year. Did you get to drive it right away, or did you have to wait for a few months?
I did get to drive it when we brought it home. We got it on a somewhat nice day, and I was super excited. I actually remember signing a couple pieces of scratch paper. I had just learned to write in cursive, and I was like, "This is my autograph."
Awesome stuff. So it was a kid cart then? It had a Briggs motor on it?
It was a kid cart with it was one of the Comer engines.
Comer, yes.
Yep, I was never happier to get rid of that Comer engine as well.
Yeah, when we kicked off, we were running because he was a little bit older, obviously, than Elliot was, but we were running junior can, so we had Yamaha 100s whenever we kicked things off, and then moved up into tag. And I felt the same way when we left tag. I was so glad to get rid of those things because the starters always broke, and you just did nothing but work on them,
Yeah, I don't miss Comers or Yamahas.
So what were you doing at the time when the go-kart came on the scene? What was your business? Or
I was in wealth management, so I was a wealth management advisor for a long time.
Completely a bad one if you're buying go-karts.
Yeah.
If you're buying racing stuff, that's a horrible wealth management
idea. The best piece of advice I can give anybody is don't get into racing.
Don't do it. Right.
Makes perfect sense why he said it was not part of the plan.
Yeah, it was never part of the plan.
Investment strategies, racing, no.
Yeah.
If you like money and like to have more of it, do not go into racing.
Right. So now what do you do?
I'm a commercial roofing now.
Okay.
So I do commercial roofing, and then Dr. LaPlaca and I have got sports vision business together.
Okay. So the commercial roofing, I saw your truck out back.
Yep.
So, all right.
Yep.
So I'm always interested in what the parents do, right? Because it's nothing short of a horrible investment. So I mean,
you and I think the same exact way. I walked in and I didn't talk to him for 10 seconds. I said, "So what do you do?"
Right.
So we do. We want to know where's the mindset, and being nosy, I guess, but really more of a, like he said, what's the mindset? Who am I talking to here, and how did he end up here?
How much time do you have to do it? You know what I mean? Because if you got like a 9 to 5, it's hard because of all the travel and all the stuff that you have that goes on with it and everything. So it's interesting, always interesting to me. I mean, we had Marcus Erickson in here, okay? Him and Rosenquist both were in here, and that's something that I always ask the drivers. All right, how did it all start? Because I want to know how it got started. Marcus Erickson's talking about how his dad was a commercial, a painter. He'd take all the paint stuff out of his van, and then he would put the go-kart in there, and they would go race. So I just had to take the junk out of my van that I worked for my dad and go race by myself, and but I get it. I mean, it's a great family deal too. I love it that you guys are.
Well, when you talk about the investment in it, it's there certainly is a financial investment, but it's there's the family investment as well,
right?
And
that's the cool part of it. That's
it's one of those things. It's just such a special. It's hard to even describe to somebody that's not been in racing, doesn't have a family in racing.
Right.
It's just a really special thing.
Talk to us about the Sports Vision deal. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in 2018, well, I'll go back to origin story. In optometry school, I always thought that there is a connection between what the visual system is doing and what athletes are doing. I played high school soccer, wrestling. I'm a first-degree black belt in Aikido, and I played high school. I played soccer all growing up. So every sport you could name, I probably played it. And there was just such a connection between how you see and how your brain works and sports. And so in optometry school, there was just never really any focus or emphasis on that. And it wasn't until probably 4 or 5 years ago where the technology finally caught up to being able to track this information and how effective we can train these systems. And that's when I put together Aries Elite Sports Vision. And then about 1.5 years after that, Travis called me up and said, hey, I want to start helping you with this because of what it's done for Elliot. And, we started out in 2019 working together, early 2019 working together because Elliot, Amanda actually contacted me and said, hey, Elliot's having some problems. Can we get him in to see you? And so I took a look at him and said, okay, there's some stuff going on here, and we need to start working on it.
I would hate for him to look at us.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's one of those. Yeah, that initial exam, and we
would get fired as patients immediately.
Like Robin Miller, we get fired before we were even hired.
Well, right. you're a spotter, so
clearly.
All I have to do is push a button while I look and talk. I don't really have to steer around stuff. So,
but realistically, there's a lot more to spotting than just that piece, right? Like you need to actually see who's coming down the corner, see where all the multiple different pieces are. Communicate that stuff
really
effectively to your driver.
The closing speed.
Right.
Like if you have a group of cars doing a photo shoot on the front stretch, and clearly they're not supposed to be. And
the spotter for the guy coming behind them should say something.
Say, hey, you got 3 guys doing their photo shoot on the front stretch.
But even your depth perception and how you judge that stuff is super important. And so if your vision isn't what it needs to be or what it should be, then you're going to struggle, and you're going to struggle communicating that information effectively.
So go ahead.
Sorry, is there others doing similar stuff, or, how revolutionary is this, what you're doing versus what they're doing? I mean, and I ask you, and the reason I ask you is because, so of course I'm in the eyewear business, so I know about enough to be dangerous. I really don't know much. So, but, Jim Leo, of course, does some reaction training and stuff like that. So I'm sure there's some of that in there, but it goes past that.
Yeah, so I actually had the pleasure of working with Jim for about 1.5 years when we first started. He was actually one of the first people I actually reached out to because one of my neighbors used to work out with him, and he's like, hey, I think Jim might actually be a good person to discuss this stuff with. And so we started working together in November of 2018, probably. And we worked together for about a year and a half, working with all of his drivers and working on all of that stuff. And then, I wanted to open up my own office, and another opportunity came up. And then we started over at D1 training over in Noblesville. And so when COVID hit, everything kind of just fell apart.
So is D1 the same? Is that what's over here too?
So there's a D1 right over here, which is owned by the Teagues. The Teague family. And then there's a new D1 over in Finch Creek Fieldhouse, which is where my office is out of.
Okay.
And so what Jim does is they incorporate all that stuff into like their circuit training.
Right.
I do something really different to what they're doing is I take a look at the vision and focus 100% on neck up. How fast you can see something, how your eyes move, how they function, how they, go in a pattern, how your brain makes decisions, how that relates to your hands, how fast we can do that stuff and how effective are your choices, how when we're fatigued, how does that affect our systems and what does that go through, and a whole bunch of stuff that Elliot can tell you probably hates that we do, but it helps make him a better driver.
Right. I was going to say, sounds like a lot of work to me. But
well, it's incredibly intriguing. I mean, we had Jim Leo in here just a week or so ago, and everything you're talking about is extremely intriguing to me. And you should be thankful that the technology has advanced the way it has, because otherwise, from what I read, you were struggling there for a little bit, and this technology wasn't where it was, and you could continue to struggle your entire career and not even know that there's a fix. So it's amazing what you guys are doing. Whenever I read 135% improvement, first of all, it's really cool that you have tools to make it better. Mm-hmm. But then how can you quantify 135% better?
Yeah, so we take a look at what his baseline is. So when we first started working together, this is where he was functioning on X, Y, and Z set of drills, or vision skills and vision. Just how he was functioning, right? So we know exactly where he's at. So concussion baselining, all of those pieces are a huge part of this, because we want to know where he's starting so that we know if there is an improvement, how do we quantify that, right? Like, what is that in a standard drill? How much faster has he gotten? And now he's, on one of our standard drills that we started on everybody, is he was functioning at maybe like 600 or 700 milliseconds. And now he's in 240 something.
Wow.
So he's probably even higher than 135. That's probably an old statistic. But the input from his visual system through his brain to his hands is so much faster now than when he originally started. But that's over 2 years of work, because he had to put in a lot of work through the at-home training, which is our Aries Academy stuff, and then the in-office training, which is the Aries Elite stuff, where he comes in once a week and we work on these things, but then there's also things that he works on at home. So I would say it's not for the person who doesn't want to put a whole bunch of effort into something. We want those athletes who are dedicated to becoming the best in whatever that they're doing, and then helping those people achieve what they want out of their life.
So because I've never seen any of the exercises or what you actually put him through, mm-hmm. This question might just be way off, but is there a chance that his improvement is because of its repetitiveness and he's doing the same exact thing again and again, or are the drills so mixed up that it forces him to do something different every time but still give you the results?
You want to answer that one?
They're real mixed up.
We got a shot. Real mixed up.
I mean, there's rarely 2 weeks that you have one of the same drills. It's just so mixed up, so focused on every different piece of everything that he can explain, because I don't know of it. It's just crazy.
So do you notice it? Do you physically notice a difference in the car now?
Yeah, when I'm in the car, when I'm driving, like if there's an incident ahead of me, I used to just kind of drive into it, and I would see it happening, but I couldn't react quick enough to just move out of the way and I just drive into it, right? And now when I see something happening, I see it, and immediately I just know, go around, and I can react quicker, and it's been a night and day difference. I have before I broke lots of parts, I've barely broken any this last season, just because of him. So I'm really thankful that we have made this connection.
Yeah,
this is about wealth management. It's a good investment.
Yep. So
just
the
because
ROI,
of him, which really makes him happy.
I see ROI on this
yeah, the
deal.
ROI is good on this.
He says that, but from that standpoint, Amanda and I, we track everything in the racing as a business. And, before we met Joe,
That's
Elliot
scary,
was,
by the way.
Yeah, I don't share the numbers with many people because they think I'm absolutely crazy. We track this stuff year over year. And at the time, before we met Joe, Elliot was already a national champion go-kart driver, was quite accomplished. And after we started working with Joe, it was a good 6 months or so afterwards.
Which Travis didn't want to do, by the way.
No, I'll tell that story in a second. I wanted nothing to do with it. I thought it was a joke.
This is like racing in general. He didn't want anything to do with it.
You got to pull Travis into stuff.
I love it, man. The
Eventually,
entire
let's
time,
go.
Dad is just kicking and
When I
screaming.
can wrap my head around it, I'm good.
Right? Kicking and screaming. I just think
Kicking
it's the
and
same
screaming.
thing.
Well, just stick with us, Dad.
Right.
We'll help you.
I tell you guys, this was not the plan. So,
Yeah.
we could look back and, after, Elliot started to really do this and understand it and make, very noticeable progress. Looking back year over year, it cost us tens of thousands of dollars less in new carts and parts and damage. And that was a piece that we hadn't even really thought through. It was, performance and results on the track is what we were looking at. We got that, but we also got back, we were spending tens of thousands of dollars less.
But that's a great. I mean, that's very
It was
cool.
very, very real.
With it, well, it's cool the way you are tracking it, because that is. I mean, again, your ROI is serious. So, I mean, so Elliot, let's rewind here. Before you got the go-kart, what did you want to do? What was your dream? Were you gonna be a fireman, a policeman?
I really didn't know, to be completely honest.
Come on.
I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what yet, to be fair. Before I did racing, I played some baseball. But the funny story behind that was, the next summer when I was just getting into go-karting, I was playing pitcher's helper because we were little and we couldn't actually pitch, right?
Right.
And I had a stomach ache, so I went to the bathroom and I got off and I was like, I feel better now. Dad, can we go to the racetrack? And the game was not even half over yet. And he was like, no, go back out there. I'm pretty sure I ended up grounded or something.
That's good.
But I obviously didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's it. So, Dad, what was your dream? He was going to play baseball.
We were going to go bass fishing. That's what we were going to do. I was buying him a fishing pole, and we were going to get a boat, and we were going to go fishing together. So.
It's hard to tear that stuff up. I will tell you, Tony Stewart hides all of his good fishing poles from Rico Abraham because he destroys all of them. So,
Really?
so there is a way to mess that stuff up.
I'd
too,
have
but,
them all in a knot. There's no doubt.
Working them over. So absolutely, but and again, so it's kind of like what your dreams are. You know what I mean? And I'm always interested, especially we have a young man like this in here, and asking questions and so how many years has it been now that you're running? What is this? What year is this for you?
I'm coming up on almost 10 years driving karts. That's crazy. But, yeah.
Well, you're well spoken. I will say that.
Thank you.
I probably couldn't have put two sentences together. I can't even now, so I don't even know why I'm saying that.
I'm not going to touch that one. Go ahead, Carl. You can say something if you'd like.
Remember who signed your check, Carl.
This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Dream Giveaway. Dream Giveaway has been giving away high-end American muscle cars to raise money for charity since 2007. Dream Giveaway is known for giving away classic and new muscle and paying the federal taxes so the winners don't have to. For $25, you can jump in the game, and part of that goes to charity. You'll have a chance at winning some of the coolest cars on the planet. Check it out at dreamgiveaway.com. certainly something we have to bring up now that we've gotten this far into the conversation. We've heard from Dr. Joe and his vision skills and his business, and we've heard that you've won championships. We've learned that we've drugged Dad all along, kicking and screaming.
Kicking and screaming.
But what we haven't talked about is the dyslexia. So you created a charity driving for dyslexia. The first question I think everybody at home would like to know is, okay, that's a great charity. It's cool that they're getting involved, but why dyslexia? Did you actually have it? Do you have it?
I actually am very dyslexic. So is my dad, actually. He was the one that recognized that I had dyslexia, that I was having the same problems that he had when he was a kid. He wasn't diagnosed until right before I was, because he noticed I was having the same issues like with reading and spelling as he was when he was littler. So he got tested and he had dyslexia, and at the time we didn't really know what it was, but then we got me tested and we were both very, very positive. And it was just, yeah.
That's a tough gig, man.
Yeah, and there's going to be
cool.
people listening and are all familiar with the word, but for those that don't know exactly what it is, explain to me what dyslexia is.
So dyslexia is a reading disability, spelling reading. Basically, while you're reading a book or whatever, you kind of, the sentences go where they're not supposed to. It's weird to explain, but the sentences kind of float around the page. Sometimes it'll look like there's spaces where there's not supposed to be, and where there's supposed to be spaces, there's not. And sometimes it looks like a big ocean of letters. And that's really frustrating. Like, you can read to yourself, okay, but when you are asked to read out loud to people, that's where it really, like, gets you. And it's, like, before I hated reading, absolutely hated it. And I got tutoring after I was diagnosed by Orton Gillingham. And now I read above grade level, and I enjoy reading a lot. And that stuff really doesn't happen to me anymore, just because it was trained to just not happen anymore. It's been crazy how that works, and it's same thing with like B's, D's, P's, and Q's. It's all the same letter, just a different way. So like dog, I'll just be reading it's like still, it's just bog. I was like, huh?
Yeah. Wow. So Doc, how do they get somebody reading properly?
So there's not really a fix for it from everything that I've read and went through. It's a neurological issue. And the thing with Elliot is that we focus on choice, like his actual neurological processing times and how he makes decisions. So there's a drill that I run, the red-green. So he has to associate right hand red, left hand green. And that's hard for him, but we work on that space a lot because it works on his processing of information, which is what he struggles with.
I'm just going to interrupt. So we're talking about letters being jumbled up in sentences. Why would colors left and right hand be hard for him?
He gets mixed up just with things in general.
Is that because of the dyslexia, or is that just an issue that he has?
So one thing that I also didn't say, left and right, I still mix it up constantly. So that's one of the hardest things he has me do in Aries Elite is we'll go in and he has fit lights. It's like reaction training and stuff. Some of them are red, some of them are green, and you have to associate left hand goes to the green and right hand goes to the red every time. And when you're trying to get the best reaction time as you go on while you do that, it gets incredibly difficult. It doesn't sound as difficult while I'm saying it, but it's quite frustrating, in fact. Mm-hmm. And it's improved a ton as well, and it's helped with my left and right. Still don't know which one's which most of the time. But, I even have labels on my steering wheel, which one's left and right in my F4 car. So, whatever works.
My wife holds her left hand up to this day because she knows that her ring is on her left hand.
I mean, if you saw him doing this drill, you would have no idea. But when we first started it, I mean, more than half of the times he was making the mistake because we hadn't made that connection or we hadn't worked through that processing. And it's been just amazing to see like how much growth he's had in there. So it's not necessarily the neurological part of it is not necessarily anything that we can correct. But sometimes there are things layered on top of the neurological part in the vision space that we can correct, right? So some kids might have dyslexia plus an issue.
Yes. Okay.
Which, again, not only makes that part challenging, but it also makes their dyslexia even more challenging. So they're going to hate reading. They're going to have headaches. They're going to not want to do all of these things that a normal kid, I shouldn't say normal, that a kid who does not have these problems wouldn't have. And so that's what happened with Elliot. He had dyslexia, but he also had some vision stuff layered on top of that. So if we clean that up, it makes the dyslexia maybe more manageable, or like we eliminate that second, third layer of things that he's struggling with.
So, Dad, how did you recognize it? I mean, you've got it.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was one of those things that I never got tested for anything. And you know, as Elliot was growing up, he was just always a bright child. He could remember things, and he had a gift that, you know, every parent thinks their kids have gifts. He just had something about him that it was very hard for Amanda and I to articulate. And when he started getting into kindergarten and first grade, we started getting reports back from the teachers that, you know, he's just not picking up on things. He doesn't understand this. You know, he's developing a little bit later, and it just completely seemed off base from how we'd experienced him. And I started to think back to, you know, me as a child and going through, it's like, my teachers told me all the same things. And I remember there were things that I could do and process things that I couldn't really explain, but I struggled mightily going through school. And I saw him going through those things, and it hit me as like, something's off here. It's like, I've lived this before. I know exactly what he's going through. I just couldn't explain it. So we started doing a ton of research, and we came across dyslexia. And I took a test online, and every single question was me.
So you didn't know you had it until...
At that time, I had no idea.
Oh, what?
Yep.
Your whole life you
Whole
spent
life.
this way.
And so I came across that, and it hit me like a train. And it was one of those things like, oh my gosh, I got to go get tested.
so you as an adult, though, I mean, and
I was
in
32 years old when I got tested.
Yeah, wealth management. I mean, that's not really an easy gig.
No,
I mean,
there's
a lot of reading,
very
a
tedious.
lot of numbers.
and-
It's like-
Lots of numbers. And
So did you just fight? Probably fight through the piece of it. I guess.
I did. And so I went and got tested when I was 32. And the group that I went in and did, they thought I was half crazy going and getting tested. You had to fill out like, what do you do, and all that stuff. And I'm a C-level executive in doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And they came back like, you're as dyslexic as could be. And it was one of those things, like a light bulb went off for me, is everything made sense of what I struggled with.
Wow.
And we went and got him tested as soon as he was able to. I think he was 6 years old. And, you know, one of the things that came back is at 6 years old, he had a college level auditory memory recall. And so when he could visually see something and have it described to him, he essentially had a photographic memory. And at the same time, he struggled reading. And so we got him a lot of those helps. But from a racing standpoint, we just started, you know, teaching all of his coaches, like, here's how he learns. And if you can show him visually what you want him to go do and how to go do it and explain it to him, he'll never forget it. And it's been a huge benefit for him, and he understands it now, and right, wrong, or different, you can somewhat exploit it.
That's interesting, that whole thing, because I hate reading. I have never been a good reader. I've read one book in my life, and it was a struggle. And my memory is much of the same.
I was just going to say, your memory is actually extremely good.
I was called in on a legal matter, and they were talking about something that happened 10 years ago, and I could recall the whole transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And wow.
I was going to ask Doc here, because the brain is struggling in one area, does it over excel in another area, and possibly that is what's going on here?
So it actually is super interesting that Elliot is a really good race driver, because I think with dyslexia, they see the world differently than most other kids, right? So most other kids will focus on one thing at one time, and that's where their central focus is. But with dyslexia, they're able to see the broad picture much better than just that one point. And the way that he sees the track and the way that he sees all these pieces, it's almost like his superpower. And there's this huge correlation between really good race car drivers and having dyslexia.
Really?
Because their spatial awareness, their spatial localization is so much better than what most other kids who are driving are. So they're seeing the track better. They're seeing, okay, I know this is coming up because of that visual representation of they've driven it and they know what they should be doing.
I remember this is right there at the mark, and I need to hit this mark, and
And as they get more and more experience, you start anticipating what's going to happen in these outside areas as well, which helps you.
So you're able to even turn out the white noise because that becomes so automated for you that you're like, okay, I know what's going on. I know exactly all of these points along the path. Now I can focus on the driver, or I can focus on what this next piece is doing to this next piece. And so, again, as they become more experienced, they automate and white noise a majority of that stuff. Like, so he's not really focusing on his hands and his driving. Like, he's focusing more on out here. Whereas when he was 5 or 6, he's focusing here because he's having to learn all of those skills. And so as that accumulates up, he's not having to do those things anymore, which allows him to become better than his other kids who are the same age.
You know, on that point, we actually started doing a research study with some of the researchers at Michigan State a couple years ago, and the interesting thing that they are finding is it's estimated that about 1 in 5 people have some form of dyslexia. It's far more common than what most folks think. So they started doing a research study among drivers, and it's still ongoing, but they estimate right now that approximately 1 in 3 professional race car drivers has dyslexia. And it's such a dramatic statistical abnormality that there's things that they want to learn from that to be able to take to the educational piece.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Carl, I got so involved in this. I mean, it is unbelievably intriguing to me. He told me to go to break about 10 minutes ago. So we're going to pause here for a quick second, take a break, and we'll be right back. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Rhino Classifieds. Tired of all those ads and random stuff that shows up when you're looking to buy or sell your car parts? Rhino Classifieds was created just for you. Welcome to a streamlined buying and selling app created by racers for racers and race fans. Modified cars, classic cars, race cars, that special big block you need, the trailer to move your baby around the country in. We got you at rhino.co.
Driving for Dyslexia was a charity that I created in 2018 when I was 10 years old. Before Justin Wilson passed away, I got to sit down and talk to him about dyslexia because he also had dyslexia. He just told me not to let it stop me, and even if you get made fun of because you're a slow reader or bullied, either way, just don't let it stop you. Always push through, even if there's any complications. And that was just what he did. His legacy was just to raise awareness. And when he passed away in the crash, I wanted to carry on his legacy, and this is how I thought I would do it. Since I've started driving for dyslexia, I've raised $125,000 for teacher scholarships, and I'm hoping to get to $150,000 this year. But yeah, I really just want to raise awareness, help everybody know that it doesn't have to stop you. Even if you have a learning disability, it doesn't mean you're really any different from any other person. Just go be you.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely great story.
How old are you again?
I'm 13.
Amazing.
What was I doing at 13? I don't even remember.
I clearly wasn't doing that. I was just thinking of that.
Putting us to shame, Elliot.
It's like
Carb Day, you were selling lemonade and donated $10,000 worth of profits to Alex's lemonade stand, which supports childhood cancer research. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think we've raised about $12,000 for the Alex's lemonade stand childhood cancer research as well. It's just I really like giving back to the community, and those are the two ways I've found to do it.
And that's the stuff that hits home for us. My daughter had cancer when she was 8 months old. 30% chance of long-term survival. His daughter's fighting it right this second.
yeah.
So, I mean, incredible stuff. I've got to look at mom and dad, and I mean, as talented as he is, he's still pointed in the right direction, and that comes back to home.
Yeah, as a family, we've always, just felt that it was important to give back and help folks that maybe haven't been as blessed as we have been. And so we try to instill those values in our kids. And I can't remember how old he was. We had just started racing. We were racing down mostly at Whiteland Raceway Park at the time. And I remember he came home from school, whether it was first grade or something like that. He was pretty young. And he asked his mom, he said, you know what, can I give all the money in my piggy bank to, this little boy at school? He has cancer. And he said, I'm pretty sure he needs it more than I do. And that was one of those things that it kind of hit us. We were like, well, absolutely. And, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but he got connected with Graham Rahal at the time. And Graham invited him out to do a lemonade stand at one of his golf outings. And so we did that one year. And it just started to grow from there. And he kept asking every single year. He's like, I want to do another one. I want to do another one. I want to do another one. And then, that kind of morphed into the dyslexia stuff once he found out he was dyslexic. But it's one of those things that, we've always tried to empower our kids to, pursue the things that are important to them. And in all fairness, he's pushed us on this more than we push him.
So that's really incredible. So he had the initial desire. You clearly are going to help him out in any way you possibly can. And you end up helping him out, or he ends up creating his own connections. I mean, a Graham Rahal is a big deal.
Yep.
And so when you're out at a golf outing like that, and I know Graham raises a lot of money, outstanding individual, is that what leads to speaking at the Indiana House of Representatives?
I don't even remember how that came about. We were involved with Driving for Dyslexia at the time, and he's been just blessed and fortunate to meet a lot of racers and people from that space, and we met one of our going back. It's there was a bill that was going through a couple years ago, and obviously we talked about it because it was a way to get more kids screening at schools. And he came and told his mom, he said, I want to write a letter to my state senator and telling him what it's like to be dyslexic and that he should vote for this bill. And again, it wasn't us going to him. He's like, I want to do this. So he wrote a letter, and we took it and delivered it to him. And it hit Senator Freeman so hard, he actually read the letter that Elliot wrote live in session. And it was a powerful moment. And Elliot was getting recognized actually for winning or doing some different things that he had done. And they went in recess and gave him the mic and let him speak. And at the end of the time, he was addressing the House at the time, just told him what it was like being dyslexic, what it was like to be, he was bullied, he struggled with reading, a number of things. He said, nobody should ever have to go through what I did, and you guys should vote for this bill because we can help a lot of kids. And it was one of those, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it, but every single person in the House stood up and gave him a standing round of applause, and it was voted on later that day, and it was, unanimously voted on. And how many things are unanimously voted on with anything now?
Anything, right.
And it was one of those things that he's just been invited back a number of times since then.
That's incredible. I mean, I promise you, when I was 25 years old, I didn't even know a House of Representatives existed, so much less at his age speaking in front of all of those. It's really incredible what all you've done to this point. I mean, as I said at the very top of the show, the racing accomplishments, and we haven't even really touched on those, but it's clearly, the program is clearly much bigger and much rounder than just racing. Can't say enough about you guys for what you've been able to do. Hey man, let's lighten this thing up a little bit because this has all been great, but there's some funny stories in here, and I know there is. I don't know what they are, but I know you guys have them, so part of my job is try and pull some of that out. But it's funny whenever you talked about making memories and just living in the moment, enjoying the ride, if you will, and the return on investment, and what a poor decision racing can be. But for years, I've told my wife, as I've traveled around the country, my son's 29 years old now, and he started when he was 13, and we've been going at it just about as hard as we possibly can go. I make my living in this industry, and he's talented. He races a lot, and he's done well. And we chase the dream as hard as we know how to chase the dream. And I told my wife, I said, we might end up living under a bridge in a Kenmore box. I'm not sure how many people know what Kenmore is anymore, but so we might be in a Kenmore box, I said, but we're going to have a wealth of memories that nobody else will have. Mm-hmm. So I understand where you're at. Hopefully you're better with your finances. I'm sure you are than I am. But, you throw it all out there and you go up and down the road and you find yourself spending all this time with your kids. And there's a ton of funny moments, and sometimes they're not funny when they're happening. They're just funny when you look back. So I'm sure you guys have them. Let's hear some of the fun, some of the stories. I mean, maybe you're cruising down the road and the trailer tire blows out, and whatever the case may be. My son used to sit in the back of the trailer and have this puss on his face because he wanted to go race, and he had to wait 2 hours for his class to pop up.
Well, yeah, a lot of those stories are things that we try to forget. And I remember the very first time that Elliot moved up into a cadet cart out of kid carts. And we're down at Whiteland Raceway Park, and we'd hired somebody to help put this thing together because I had no idea what I was doing on those at the time. And we put him down, and we send him out. And first corner of the first lap, his right rear tire and wheel come off. And I mean, it's just going off the track. And he keeps going. He's just driving around. He does almost a half a lap, won 3 tires.
I didn't know what it felt like, so I was just driving around. I'm like, well, this feels real weird, but I've never been in one of these before. So it's like, I don't know if it's just this, but the rear end feels really loose.
Yeah. So
I'd go around, I'd turn the corner, whoa, okay. And my dad's like, stop, what's wrong? Your tire fell off, like, back there.
Yeah, I'm running around waving my arms out. I'm like, stop. Like, of course, at this point, half of the go-karts, flattened out on the bottom and everything's worn off of it. But it was his very, very first time ever in a cadet cart and drove around without a tire on.
So why did the wheel come off, Elliot?
Yeah, there's a good chance somebody did put the tires back on, right?
There's probably a really good chance. So I've lived that as well. We were running short course off-road racing with Lucas Oil Series, and we're in Mexico. And Mexico had the most brutal rhythm section of any track that we went to. It was like that competition of straight rhythm where the dirt bikes go through. And it was just a car eater. It just destroyed cars, even when everything was right. And we were going to make a wheel and tire change, and I remembered starting on the right front. I went around, loosened all the lugs, and I started on the right front. We were changing wheel spacers. I think we were going to make it a little wider, changing wheel spacers, and I went to put the right front back on. And it turns out the wheel that we were changing to would not fit with the spacer on. And it stopped us, We're trying to figure out the issue, trying to figure out the problem. We were running up against the clock. We were about to run out of time and miss session. And we decided, okay, listen, we're going to bail on this for now. Just put the old spacer and wheel back on it for now. We'll go out, run the session, and then we'll deal with it, right? So because we're running out of time, I put the right front back on, tighten everything back down, and say, there you go. Completely forgot that I'd loosened all the other 3, and sure enough, he comes around and makes the first couple of turns and hits the rhythm section, and man, I mean, he just gets in this wicked huckabuck, and it just destroys everything on the car all the way around. I was like, yep, that's me. That one's my fault. And you can't feel any worse, right?
No. Yeah, we had a similar thing. Probably just even a month ago, we were going out, and Elliot came back, and he's like, Dad, I don't know what to tell you, but there is something wrong with these tires. He's like, it doesn't feel good at all. So I go back around, I check everything. I'm like, everything's fine, man. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this go-kart. So the next session, we're getting ready to go back out, and I go to set the tires. I just make sure that they're still there, and I put the tire gauge on. It's like 40 pounds. And I was like, I never set the tire pressures the last time. I was like, well, instead of 10, 12 pounds of pressure, like you're driving around on 40 pounds, like no wonder it didn't feel right.
It was a rain race as well. Like most of the time I'm okay at the rain, but it didn't feel anything normal like I had driven before. So I'm turning a corner, like I'm full steering lock and I'm going straight. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Come on, these tires are not okay. Like, how old are they? They're like brand new. It makes no sense. As we go out, and it's like, I know what the problem was. What? There are 45 pounds of pressure. Oh, well, that's an issue.
Yeah.
I've heard of airing them up so you have grip on the outlap, but
he had plenty of air in the tires.
So how long did it take you before you could actually feel the inside rear tire lifting up and setting back down?
Probably around like 10-ish years old.
Yeah, I remember. I think we had been racing karts. We ran out there at Newcastle for a couple of years. We ran full points and junior can, and then he wanted to go on the national tour, and we started. But I remember because he had no clue, and then all of a sudden when the light bulb went off, it happened so quickly that I didn't believe him. I was like, "What?" And he started saying stuff like, "It's lifting the rear tire, but it's setting it down too soon." Or the back is pushing the front. I think the front is turning in good enough. I've just got too much rear grip, so it's overpowering the front. And he was starting to really diagnose it. But I mean, this happened in the span, I want to say, of like a couple of months. So it went from nothing to like everything made sense. Do you remember that?
He is very, very good feedback, and it's one of those things that I don't even remember who encouraged us to do this, but probably 8-9 years old, every single session we still do to this day. And when he comes off the track, we debrief and what's the kart doing on entry, what's it doing middle and through the exit. And he just described it. And I remember that I'll never forget the day we were out at Newcastle, and he came back in. He's like, Dad, the back's starting to wash out of me a little bit, but I don't think we got a problem with the back end. He's like, I think you ought to add some more caster. And he's like, I'm pretty sure that'll drive through the corner and stop the back from washing out. He's like 8 or 9 years old. And I'm like, huh? I was like, and this comes from, I have no mechanical background at all. And we started to work through those things, and he was able to he's won a lot of races for himself based on the feedback that he can feel in the cart and tell us how to do it. And I don't necessarily know how he learned it. It certainly wasn't for me, but what he's able to do and give us feedback has been phenomenal, and it's kind of cool. And he can talk to us, but how he's able to give feedback on the F4 car now as well, without having much experience in it, it's been pretty cool to see and do that with the team.
Well, it's those initial amounts of learning. Whenever the light bulb finally went off for him in go-karting, that will all transition the rest of his career, whatever car he's in, because it happens so much quicker in a kart than it's going to happen in any other car that he's in. So it's all going to make sense. I was fortunate that when we were out at Newcastle, while I wasn't really mechanical, I was in the industry, but I wasn't really mechanical about anything. So to go out there and try to take care of the kart for him, I wasn't very good at it, and he had no real feedback. We went with a guy named Mike Oddie, who was very, very good, but I also knew Derek Daly. So we were running with Connor and Joseph Newgarden. We're at Newcastle the same time we were. And I remember Derek telling me, he said, I asked these same 3 questions every single time. What did it do, entry, mid-corner, exit, every single time. And he said, I tell him to focus on one corner. Forget about the whole rest of the track, because you have to remember one corner before you can remember 2. And I try to explain to people that have never been part of what you guys are living right now, what you understand is it's milliseconds, right? I mean, they're only in the turn from entry to exit, for a second, maybe 2 seconds or something. So, and you're asking somebody, a young kid, to process what happened entry, middle, and exit. We're talking about fractions of a second. And then, in the midst of hanging on to a cart that, if they're driving it hard, is on the edge, retain it.
Yeah.
And this is not a simple thing to do.
No, and it's the point now where we go to tracks, and he makes it really easy for me. We'll go out the first session, and he'll come back, and he's like, all right, Dad, we need a little bit more caster, widen the front 5 mil, and drop the tire pressure 2 pounds. And we go out the next time, and it's pretty darn good.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, and how cool is it to hear your son tell you that? You swell up with pride, but the confidence that it gives you that he's going to hop inside of that car and go get maximum out of it is incredible.
Yeah, I used to argue with him quite a bit about what we were going to do, and finally it's like, he proved me wrong enough. It's like, all right, this is what you want to do. Let's go do it.
Mine had come back, I can't tell you how many times. Matter of fact, it turned into a game with his crew guys. he would say, I think the left rear is out 3 mil. And he was racing a front-wheel drive car at the time, so if the rears were out a little bit, it really affected the steering. And he would come back and say, I think the left rear is out like 3 mil, and they would say, there's no way you feel 3 mil. It's impossible. And constantly they would check it. It'd be 3 mil, 5 mil, whatever the case was. And I mean, it's pretty impressive. The guys that are switched on, clearly he is. It's amazing what they feel.
So the funny thing about just that, what he was saying about how I can give feedback about the F4 car, before I had started driving in that, I would always, like, for oversteer, I would say the car just turns in too fast. Or for understeer, it doesn't turn enough, and I just get push. And in the F4 car, I explain. It's a lot easier to explain, just oversteer in the rear end stepping out, or understeer. And we were in the car the other day, and my dad gets on the gas in his truck because it was raining and whatever, and the rear end stepped out. I got understeer. No, Dad. No, you didn't. He
corrected me really quickly.
That's awesome.
He said, I got understeer. No, you got oversteer. That's not how it works.
It's loose, Dad. It's not tight.
Yeah.
He keeps me on point.
We'll be right back after this. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Toyota. Doc, what's the aspirations? Where are you going with the business? Now that I know you're involved in a lot of stick and ball sports, helping out kids of all ages and disciplines, and clearly involved in the racing side of things. Do you see this thing exploding? You're into the business? You're into the world?
That's the goal. I mean, I hope so. Right now, I think the last few years has really been creating the product more than anything, because right now it's the Wild West, I would say. Like, people are in this space who probably shouldn't be in this space, meaning like chiropractors are doing sports vision, or, PT and those kind of people are doing some of this stuff. Ultimately, I think that it'll be optometry, because that's what we do. But I think from the business side of it, I think we're expanding. We actually have our first meeting tonight with our 3 new sales team, and we're going to start figuring out how do we continue to spread the message, because that's the biggest piece, is educational of this exists. This is going to help your kid. This is going to help not even just their sport, but school, and how they affected, everyday life and how they feel. And so that's really our why, is how do we help bring this to a broader base, and how do we help those kids achieve their dreams? And even if we get to be a small part in their journey, that's what we're after, is how do we help them just become a little bit better, make things a little bit easier for them. And so, realistically, the athlete population, this is going to sound weird, but is underserved in the space of vision, because they think, okay, I'm seeing really well, okay, but they might not be, right? They're like, oh, I got to D1 and I'm hitting the ball well, okay, but you could be better. Let's work in that space.
Am I correct in understanding that you two are partners in this?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Building this out over the last year or so, one of the hardest challenges we've got is people just like me. It's too good to be true. The ironic piece of this is the overwhelming majority of our clients are professional or college level NCAA athletes, because they get it. And just being able to get the message out that, you can absolutely have a 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, middle school, high school athletes, they can have amazing improvements in their reaction time in all sports.
Yeah, like Canyon and Gavin.
Yep.
I got a text message from one kid the other day, and his dad, like, he's crushing. Like, he hit 2 home runs in the game, and he hit 3 home runs the weekend before, and like his OBP is off the charts, and like he's like statistically like double what everybody else is, because he's training in our space, and like he like just was like, I want to tell everybody about this. And so like those pieces are super validating for me as we create things going forward, and as I do the in-office stuff, and it's really cool to hear those stories that, hey, I wouldn't have been able to do this if I wasn't training with you. Like, that could have caused me serious damage, or going 70 miles an hour into a turn. Like, that's scary, probably as a parent as well, but even as somebody who marginally likes Elliot,
Well, to listen,
I love you too.
to listen to him, talk about that moment, and then going back to when you were talking about right hand is red, left hand is green, or whichever way you had it. I remember when you were telling me the drill and him struggling with it, I remember thinking, okay, well, he can do it wrong, or it's going to take him a fair amount of time to process, oh, green is left, and reach out and hit it. So that amount of time, as he gets better and better, becomes more reactive rather than a thought process. So he's in a situation where he has no brakes, and his reactive is taking over, hand-eye coordination. Everything is doing what it needs to do at that high-level moment, and consequently he makes a potentially disastrous situation, acceptable and a chance to drive again. I get it.
That's one of the things as well, like, that's very frustrating at first, is you're going to want to go so fast, you make tons of mistakes, but you still feel fast until they tell you how many mistakes you made. And then it's like, okay, so you try to fix it, but you go do the same thing until they tell you have to slow down, you're going to feel slow, you're going to hate it until you get fast. And it was grueling until I'm still not super fast in it yet, but I'm getting there. And it feels a lot better than it did then, and it's just, yeah.
It's easy for us to sit here, Elliot. Myself, if I went, I would look at the results and say, I was a little bit better today, or I was a little bit worse, and go about my business. But for you must go home and think, there's so many variables here. What did this guy eat? How much sleep did this guy get? Did he drink coffee today and now he's suddenly faster? Does he have wings because he did a Red Bull and vodka, or whatever the deal may be, right? I mean, there's so many variables, again, that could influence how somebody performs that particular day.
That keeps me up at night more than you know, because it's an ever-changing thought process for me specifically, because I have to address so many different things. How is this skill going to affect this thing? How does this thing integrate with this thing? How is this piece of technology, now we're going to use this? And what does that whole system look like? And that's completely separate from the in-office stuff that I have to build these progressions. So like, they start here, and then I'm going to add this, and I'm going to make it more difficult. And now we're going to have them running, and now we're going to have, do testing after they're fatigued. Then we're going to do X, Y, or Z. So it's building out all these progressions to challenge them in office, but using different tools. Like Elliot said, every session seems different, or there's a different feel to it because they've done really well on a task and now they're ready to move forward. And so I think that the variability is something that a lot of people don't want to do in this field, which is what I really have enjoyed doing is figuring out how do we make this a viable thing for people.
So we'll wrap things up here. You've been here a long time, guys, and I appreciate the time and the effort. As we close things up, talk to me about the F4 program. That's what you have coming on this year. And I went on and I got a little confused when I was looking at the schedule. I saw 4 races. Matter of fact, I want to say Mid-Ohio at the end of the month, end of June. But I also saw where somebody had run at Road America already this year. I was a little confused. When does the season actually start?
So the reason you are a bit confused about that, I think, is I'm actually too young to be running the US F4 season. I'm only 13 and the age limit's 15. But it's just going to be... I've been testing a lot, and the goal is to be when I'm 15. The team wants me to be ready so we can go out and win the championship the first year, and then from there on do the same thing in F3, Indy Lights, and IndyCar, and hopefully be an IndyCar when I'm 18. And Surface Charmin Racing has helped me already so much. I've increased my racecraft and everything, and just learned how to feel the car a lot better. And I've already even done like 4 races, and just that has increased how I drive so much. It's really I can't really even tell you.
So if you're not old enough to run the US F4, what race did you compete in?
So I did some unsanctioned academy races
Okay.
this winter for just for practice and stuff.
Any thoughts of going to Europe at all?
Not at this point. You're looking at the feeder series they've got here between the Road to Indy and F4, F3. The plan is to stay here right now.
Okay.
It's better for the pocketbook as well.
So what is the plan this year? Obviously, the next 2 years, as you just indicated, you're going to continue your development in the F4. What's on the docket? What's on the schedule for this season?
Well, I actually have a regional race at Stars of Karting this weekend at Newcastle. I'm going to be in Road America the next 2 weeks after this, doing regional and national races. We're still doing a lot of karting just to keep me in shape and everything.
Sure.
We're doing lots of testing in the F4 car. We've already had, I think, 14 days just driving. And yeah, just real busy. Just same thing, karting's every weekend.
So you're chasing points in Stars of Karting, WKA Man Cup?
I'm actually not chasing any points right now. We're just doing like events that come to us. Some events whenever we have time. I've missed out on a lot of just the bigger series, like the starting races of the season. Just taking a break because we've been so busy giving the parents a break because they want one. They don't want to race every weekend as bad as I want to. And yeah, it's just we driving what we can.
Yeah, we decided at the beginning of the year. At that point, I think we do have 14 or 15 days of traveling all over the place in the car. So we decided to do the car at the beginning of the year instead of some of the go-karting. But it's every single weekend he's running.
Awesome.
Yep.
Sounds like a very exciting future for sure, and can't thank you guys enough for coming on here. Dr. Joe, best of luck, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for what you do. It's super exciting, very intriguing. Travis, thanks for finally joining in and help supporting him. And
Yeah, I got on board. I got on board
drag him
eventually.
into this.
and Elliot, best of luck to you. Thanks for dragging your dad in, kicking and screaming, and getting
Thank
him on the
you.
program,
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So hope you enjoyed this edition of The Skinny. Great stuff. And keep checking us out. We'll have more wonderful stories coming your way soon. Thanks for being with us here on The Skinny. This episode has been brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, Dream Giveaway, and General Tire. For the latest in sunglasses, optical frames, accessories, and apparel, be sure to check out fatheads.com. That's Fatheads with a Z. Production facilities provided by Fatheads Eyewear Studios. All rights reserved.